Hi again, friends. During this lecture and the next few, I want to begin to set targets for improvement. I want to assume that there's a corporate strategy, and I want to assume that you're an operating manager of an operating unit, or you're a member of a team that operates a property or a piece of the organization, a business unit. And I want to start to think about where are we going? What's the business strategy? And what are the things that we have to change to execute that strategy to get to where we want to get to? So that's the purpose. And we want to begin that with looking at the customer. We all work for only one person ultimately, no matter what our level or is or our function is. We work for the customer. We work for the person who writes a check, gives us their credit card number. That's the customer. So we want to think about to what degree and how are we currently satisfying the customer, and what do we need to do a better job of satisfying the customer? Now, I don't know your business, obviously. If I were working with you personally, we could talk in real terms about your business. But I want to take a case study, a business that you can understand, we can all understand, and that isn't too complicated. This will be a simple case to illustrate the process and the principles involved. And then I'm going to ask you to take that and apply it, you and your team preferably, take it and apply it to your business unit. So we all know about hotels, right? I've talked about restaurants and hotels because they're easy for us all to understand. So let's assume that we are the management team of a hotel property, or it could be 3 or 4 hotel properties. It doesn't matter. And let's assume that the corporation, if maybe the corporation is Hilton Hotels or Marriott or Red Roof Inn, doesn't matter. And let's assume that they have set a corporate target of revenue growth of 20% and increasing the return on operating assets. We're going to talk about revenue growth and operating assets in more detail later. But let's just assume there's a goal for that, okay? A goal for return on our assets. Most corporations would have both a revenue goal and then a return on asset goal, which is a way of computing profitability of our assets, profitability of the properties. And also, let's assume that the corporation, in thinking about how we're going to get there, what they have said, and you can do this, they've set a productivity number. And in almost every business, there's a yield number, and then there's a utilization number. For example, in airlines, I've worked with several airlines. The yield number is dollars per seat. Because it's possible if you have 200 seats on an airplane, you could have all 200 seats filled, but you could still be losing money. If what it costs us to operate was $100 a seat for a given flight, and our average revenue was $90 a seat, it doesn't matter that they're all filled up, you're going to lose money. So the yield has to be higher than the cost. So let us assume, and you can imagine that applying to almost any business, to hotels, what do we get per room, and what does it cost us to operate per room? And if we can increase what we get, which might mean fewer discounts or raising the price or lots of ways to get there, that would improve the economic performance of our business. So there's yield, dollars per seat, if you will, and then there's utilization, percent of seats filled. And in a hotel, it would be the percent of rooms filled each night. Or you could do it by week or month or year, but the percent of rooms filled for any given time period. And you can see, those two numbers, sort of the yield and the utilization rate, that they pretty well define economic performance in most organizations. In a plant, it's operating efficiency, that there's some theoretical limit that the machinery in the plant can spit out of, whatever the product is. And that percent is the utilization. And then the dollars per unit, right, relative to our costs, that's the same as yield on an airplane or in a hotel room. So let's assume that we have those goals from the corporation, or if we don't, we set them ourselves. We decide, what we want to do in improving dollars per room and percent utilization. And I would assume, if this is not true, then you should work on this. I would assume that if you're a hotel manager, you know the percent of rooms that are utilized each night and over the week or over the month. You probably also know that there's seasonal variations in that. There are certain weeks or months where that utilization rate tends to go up. I will assume also that you know what that number is in terms of the yield, in terms of the dollars per room. If not, get it. You need to know those numbers. So let's assume like that's a framework for a business strategy. Now the question is, how are we going to get there? And you can't just yell at people to do more, get more money, get more customers here. That's strategic yelling. It's not strategic planning, and it's not strategy execution. We have to think now about the nature of our system, and you remember our three circles: technical, social, and economic systems. We have to think about those, and we have to think about what is it we need to change, what is it we need to redesign in each of those. And we're going to do this as we go through the rest of the course till we're actually doing the design and creating that future state. So here is a chart that I suggest you use. Now, in the hotel that we have, there are different aspects of the hotel. I mean, for example, there is the room itself, the quality of the rooms, the size of the room, etc. There are communication patterns and communication devices that go on in a hotel. Very, very important. How people feel about their stay is at least in part conditioned by how you answer the phone when they call down for room service or when they call down for something else. And there's a restaurant, let us assume, in the hotel. And then there's staff behavior, right? And in the restaurant, of course, you have the menu and you have the quality of service and so forth. And this chart is simplified. You can go into much more detail if you wanted. If I were sitting down with you and we were doing this for real, we would probably flesh this out more and have more detail to it. But I'm just trying to give you an example and make the point. So under staff behavior, there's courtesy of staff, there's responsiveness of staff, how knowledgeable they are, and so forth. So those are features of the products and features or characteristics of the product or service that we offer through the hotel. Now, we want to know what our customers think. Do they think they're all great? Do they think they're all terrible? Do we know? Now, I'm telling you, this is just a must. You must know the answer to this question. And you're going to survey your customers. You can call them, follow-up calls and interview them. You can give them, cards to fill out as they leave the hotel. Lots of ways to do it. You get their email. You send them a SurveyMonkey, online survey. Lots of things that you can do to get their feedback. But you must have it. You must get their feedback. And let us assume that there are really two dimensions of this. One is how they rate the restaurant, the menu in the restaurant, for example, or how they rate the internet availability in the rooms, for example. Those are both characteristics that may or may not be important to them. But we want them to rate them on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being, I think it's terrible, 5 being, it's terrific. And very simple scale. Let's not make it complicated for our customers. So let's use a 1 to 5 scale. And then we also want to ask them how important it is. So for each feature, like the cleanliness of the room, for example, or the availability of internet service, or the television, cable service in the room, how do you rate that? Do you think it was terrific or do you think it was terrible? And how important, in your making a decision to choose a hotel, how important is that feature? Now, you see what we're getting to here. What we're getting to is we want to work on the things that are most important to our customers, right? We're more likely to increase customers coming back. We're more likely to increase the overall rating of our hotel on Expedia or whatever websites that they're using for travel. And we want to increase our brand perception. We want to increase the degree to which out in the marketplace, people think we're a great place to stay. So what's important is improving in the customer's perception of those things that are most important. So we're going to do that rating. We're going to ask them to rate. And here's a result. This is just, a hypothetical result. And what do you see here? The things that I've indicated in red are the things that they felt were most important, but they rated low, right? So you want to work on those things. If I tell you, the most important thing to me, I give it a 5 when I visit a hotel, this is pretty much a true example. Internet wireless availability. I want to be able to go down to the restaurant, use my laptop. I want to sit in the room, use my laptop. And I want it high speed, and I want it all the time. I want absolute high quality internet access. That's one of the most important things to me when I visit a hotel. So I give it a 5 in terms of its importance. Now, then when you ask me to rate your service, and my little meter down in the lower right of my laptop, it was always low, and I had trouble logging on, and the log on was confusing, and whatever else was wrong with it. I rate it poorly. I give you a poor rating. So the fact that I've said it's very important, and I've also said I don't think you're very good at that, that should tell you that's a high priority for improvement. Does that make sense? If I say something, I think something is terrific. I think the rooms are very clean, or I think the quality of the food was terrific, but actually I don't care because I'm going out to eat anyway, and there are a lot of restaurants around the hotel, so that's not important to me. You're not going to worry about the things that are not important, but I rate high. So we can put this on a matrix, and the matrix is going to look something like this, right? And this is called a Kano analysis, but don't worry about that. It doesn't matter what it's called. It's simply, an evaluation of customer satisfaction to importance or value. Does that make sense? So you see in this analysis, based on that previous chart, something that I said, or the customers, I'm playing customer, I said was very important was the workspace. Now maybe when I go look at your hotel rooms, there is no desk. I want a desk. And at the desk, I want a place to plug my laptop in and actually plug in several devices. I want to be able to plug in my iPhone to charge and so forth. And there's been a lot of innovation in the last 5 or 10 years in the quality of workspaces in hotel. And that's because if you're appealing to business travelers, really, really important for business travelers. And you can sort of see by what's all the way on the right-hand side, that was rated near 5, 4.9 or so. The things that were rated high pretty well indicates you have business travelers here, right? I mean, workspace was rated high and internet access was rated high. And I think, for most business travelers today, those are both really important factors. So those are northeast. Those are in the upper right-hand side, or to the right. Right for importance, up for how unsatisfied. You notice that the scale is reversed. 1, meaning you're lousy, is at the top. You're doing great is at the bottom. So we want to go northeast. We want to move up there. So that's an analysis of things you need to work on. Now, think technical system and social system again. And I want you to do this analysis, and I want you to make note. Because when we get to design, this is what we're going to work on in designing the new system and executing our strategy. The strategy of increasing utilization rate is not going to come by saying increase utilization rate. It's going to come by having better internet access. It's going to come by having a more comfortable workspace for the business traveler. So that's what you have to do to execute strategy. You've got to work on these things that satisfy customers, that are important to customers, that add value for the customer. Does that make sense? That's what this is. Let's now go. The next session, we're going to look at what's going on in the landscape and how that's going to affect us.